Our scripture today comes from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1, verses 29 through 39. As soon as they left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. Jesus came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening at sunset, they brought to him all who were sick or possessed with demons, and the whole city was gathered around the door. And he cured many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went to a deserted place, and there he prayed. And Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." He answered, "Let us go on to the neighboring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also, for that is what I came out to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in their synagogues and casting out demons. This is the gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I'm going to start with this meditation from Howard Thurman. So I invite you to sit back and center yourself, make sure you're grounded. You can close your eyes as you hear these words. How good it is to center down, to sit quietly and see oneself pass by. The streets of our minds seethe with endless traffic. Our spirits resound with clashings, with noisy silences, while something deep within hungers and thirsts for the still moment and the resting lull. With full intensity, we seek, ere the quiet passes, a fresh sense of order in our living, a direction, a strong, sure purpose that will structure our confusion and bring meaning in our chaos. We look at ourselves in this waiting moment, the kinds of people we are. The questions persist. What are we doing with our lives? What are the motives that order our days? What is the end of our doings? Where are we trying to go? Where do we put the emphasis and where are our values focused? For what end do we make sacrifices? Where is my treasure? And what do I love most in life? What do I hate most in life? And to what am I true? Over and over, the questions beat in upon the waiting moment. As we listen, floating up through all the jangling echoes of our turbulence, there is a sound of another kind, a deeper note, which only the stillness of the heart makes clear. It moves directly to the core of our being. Our questions are answered, our spirits refreshed, and we move back into the traffic of our daily round with the peace of the eternal in our step. How good it is to center down. The gospel story I read earlier was the first time in the Gospel of Mark that Jesus goes away to pray. And it will happen several times in that gospel, and it is one of the things that is consistent across the gospels. Jesus is always going off somewhere to pray. And such practice is something that helps him stay grounded. It helps him clarify his purpose and better discern where his presence is most needed. In this particular story, we see that he has spent a whole day of healing and exorcising demons and being with his community that is clearly in deep need, right? Like all of the town has something that they need Jesus to heal. And yet in this time of prayer, early in the morning, Jesus has discerned and has made what I think is probably the hard decision that he needs to go elsewhere. That while he could probably spend a lifetime just in Capernaum, healing those whom he knows and loves, the call to proclaim the reign of God to a wider audience must take precedence. And I don't think he would have come to that conclusion if he hadn't taken the time to really go away and pray. That's what reminded me of that beautiful meditation from Reverend Howard Thurman. If you don't know who Howard Thurman is, he was a Black pastor and theologian in the early mid 20th century. He was friends at Howard University with MLK Sr., and therefore became a spiritual advisor and mentor to many civil rights leaders, including Dr. King Jr. And his theology, therefore, permeates and is foundational to the civil rights movement and much of Black liberation theology in the modern context. And this meditation is a good glimpse into his theology. He is always mystical and rooted in prayer and always propels the reader into action. Like this line from the end of that meditation says, "Our spirits refreshed, we move back into the traffic of our daily round with the peace of the eternal in our step." For Thurman, like I think for Jesus, prayer is the thing we do to be refreshed and energized for then the work that is in front of us. And yet, as important as I know it is, and as good and rooted and energized as I feel when I am intentional about prayer, I find that it all too often gets set aside. I'll admit that in the last few months with a baby that blessedly, I'm not complaining, the baby blessedly sleeps at night, but only sleeps during the day in 45-minute chunks. So that is the amount of time that I have to do work. I so often find myself then launching right into work mode, and I have to dive into the doing, and I don't set aside the time for the being and the praying. Maybe you are all better than that. I'm 100% sure most of you are better at that than I am, because I am a type 1 on the Enneagram. I'm a type A. I'm a perfectionist. I like the doing of things. And it takes me having to be very intentional about my prayer practices. So I rely on good resources and good structured practices. And I am lucky that there is no shortage of things for me to choose from to aid me in finding prayer practices that work. So we are approaching this season of Lent, preparing for it to begin. I am going to say this, and I'm going to say it again next week, and I'm going to say it throughout the season of Lent. Do not give anything up this Lent. You have already given up enough. Don't do it. It's fine. Jesus doesn't care. However, it is an opportunity maybe to take on something, to be intentional about our prayer practices in this time. And so I'm going to give you some resources now, and there's a lot of resources coming in your Lent bags that you might find helpful if you want to attempt to figure out in this next week and a half what will be helpful to you to be intentional about finding those prayer practices. Are you addicted to your phone and don't feel the need to change that? Perhaps there's an app that you want to have on your phone. If you're already going to be scrolling through your phone anyway, maybe scroll through an app. One of my new favorites is called the Our Bible app. It looks like this. But it looks like this. Our Bible app. It has lots of free devotionals, or you can spend a little bit and get the upgrade for all the devotionals, prioritizing especially voices of color and queer voices in their devotionals. So if that's something you want to do, it also has podcasts that you can listen to. So if you want on your phone, I recommend the Our Bible app. Do you need a daily email? Do you need something that just comes and is in your face and says, read me, and then you can do it that way? There are lots of those resources out there as well. Do you need a book? Do you want to cure yourself of your addiction to the phone? And so then you want something away from your screen. There are so many different books there. I like this series. It's called 40-day journey with, and this happens to be the Howard Thurman version, but they have any number of other theologians. They have a Bonhoeffer one, they have a Luther one, a Kathleen Norris one. Do you need a book? I can also give you other things. Is it as simple as opening a Bible that maybe you have in your house that you haven't opened in a while, and going to the Psalms and starting at Psalm 1 and just reading a psalm a day? Is it being intentional about praying the Lord's Prayer first thing when you wake up or last thing before you go to bed? Those were just some things right off the top of my head. If you have favorite resources that you use, that you find helpful, please put them in the chat so the rest of us can learn. Like I said, this is always a learning edge for me. So if you have found something that really works for you, let us know about it in the chat. We do these sorts of things because we know that when we center down, we are better able to discern where to go next. Being intentional about prayer means we are better able to be intentional about our actions. If we want to see the healing that Jesus can bring, to proclaim the good news that Jesus himself embodied, we follow then Jesus's example and pray and ask for God's will to be made known to us. May you find the time to be so lost in prayer that the peace of the eternal infuses your every step. Amen.